Out here, you live and die by your reputation.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and we have finally got the Han Solo simulator we have always wanted in Star Wars Outlaws. The game is a risky undertaking, but it's one worth taking because it connects the original trilogy, the sequel series, and the extended universe in a more grounded and intimate way than anything we've seen before.
Are you sure you're not overstating that to micro-hook me into watching the whole video?
I mean it, Doug, but to explain it, we have got to talk about everything that happens in the game, what it means, and how it's able to tell the most grounded Star Wars story we have ever played.
Get to it!
Outlaws claims to be the first open-world Star Wars game, and it delivers exactly what you would expect in many ways. You've got a cool ship, a plucky droid, and even a cute Pokemon-esque sidekick, Nyx the Mercall. Immediately, it's clear that this is not a Jedi game. There's not a lightsaber to be found. Your focus as a player is to navigate the social mechanics of what feels like a very fleshed out underworld, using skills that feel very grounded and accessible to any particular person in the galaxy. Now, this isn't Lucasfilm's first attempt at a Star Wars underworld type story. There was of course that canceled TV series, 2 Boba Fett movies, and a canceled Guillermo del Toro movie on Jabba the Hutt's rise to power.
Well, I don't remember any of those, person.
That's because many of them never saw the light of day. They were either lost in the Disney acquisition or they felt like too big of a gamble for the mouse to make. Despite these attempts, struggling even to make it off the ground, Kay can finally explore this criminal underworld across the entire Outer Rim.
The Outer, do you say what now?
The Outer Rim, it's the Star Wars equivalent of the Wild Wild West. It consists of planets on the galaxy's outer edge, further away from the core planets. They're filled with the poorest of the poor and the baddest of the bad. Kay's journey takes place between episodes 5 and 6 of the original trilogy, meaning that the rebellion has been scattered after their defeat on Hoth, and Han Solo has been encased in carbonite. And he's proudly on display in Jabba's palace and in every trailer for the game. Now, Kay is a struggling street rat who is always looking for the one job that'll get her out of the slums of Canto Bight, the glamorous casino seen in The Last Jedi. After being lied to by the Rebel Alliance,
just pay me.
We're the Rebel Alliance.
So?
One of Kay's jobs goes very bad, and she is forced to flee the city after being death-marked by Silo, the leader of Sireg Besh, who's actually working for the ISB, but we don't know that yet.
The Indian School of Business.
The Imperial Security Bureau. Basically, it's the Empire's personal CIA. Now, Kay flees into the Outer Rim, where we meet Jalen Vrax.
I'm just trying to tip the scales for people like us, Kay.
A sleazy information broker who sets Kay on the game's main goal: find a crew, rob Slyro blind, and escape to freedom.
All before breakfast.
The game takes place across 5 major worlds in the Outer Rim: Tatooine, Kijimai, Akiva, Toshara, and Cantonica. Kay maneuvers back and forth between each planet, recruiting new crew members and building her reputation. Throughout her escapades, we get Kay's backstory through a series of flashbacks showing us that she was abandoned by her mother as a child.
You're a good kid, Kay. Just remember, in this galaxy, you can't trust someone's always gonna be.
So Kay begins to meet members of her heist crew as she completes jobs across the Outer Rim. The first to join is ND5X, a BX commando droid from the Clone Wars.
Who are you?
Run.
Jalen has essentially turned him into a slave with a custom restraining bolt. He is not only one of the best written droids in Star Wars, but his story really adds a lot of empathy for droids in general.
Wait, I thought droids were bad guys in the Clone Wars, and now I gotta feel sorry for them?
Of course, Doug, people can change, or rather reprogram, but Jalen's use of the retaining bolt is really cruel. ND5 is essentially Jalen's slave due to his restraining bolt, but in a galaxy far, far away, that's unfortunately pretty common.
Oh, why? Because you're my organic overlord?
Gadik, a male Rhodian and former droid programmer responsible for the development of the Imperial Viper droids, fills the mechanic's role.
Gadik!
He has a history with Kay, so he accepts a position on the crew to absolve himself of his guilt over his past work. We meet Aang, a widowed Chadrafan safecracker with a knack for explosives.
Leaves a bitch minky, de porco fusis.
And Asara, a male Twi'lek and rebellion agent who was responsible for Kay's death mark in the first place.
You're not Zerg Besh.
What is this? Where's my cash?
After we get the crew together, Jalen introduces a plot twist. He adds Kay's estranged mother, Rico, into the mix as the crew's new slicer.
I hate her.
Things are pretty rocky at first, but eventually they make their peace while breaking into an Imperial base. So right as the crew thinks they've locked in the score and they've got Slyro in their grasp, the conversation takes a turn. We discover that Jalen is Slyro's brother and that Slyro sold out the family shipbuilding company for a place in Darth Vader's ISB.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Jalen disgraces his brother, takes his position under Darth Vader, and assumes control over Zarek Besh. To our karmic satisfaction, Jalen is defeated by his former droid ND5. Kay and crew are able to successfully escape to freedom and sail off into the open galaxy.
So, where do we go next?
Anywhere we want, Andy.
Throughout the story, Kay's actions cause her to cross paths with each of the major criminal factions vying for their place in the Outer Rim. Some combination of competing criminal factions runs every planet you encounter during the game. This inevitability puts you face to face with their leaders, including Jabba the Hutt. In addition to the Jabba the Hutt cartel, we're reintroduced to the Pikes, the Crimson Dawn, and a new faction, Clan Ashiga. These factions represent the conflicting alliances Kay must either make or break throughout the game, and they're pretty critical, as having a good or bad reputation with them will literally prevent you from accessing certain areas of the game. For example, putting yourself on better terms with the Crimson Dawn can lock you out of key areas on Tatooine under control of the Hutts.
Oh boy, not this place again.
Well, of course, it's home base for the Hutt cartel, a clan of gangsters that specialize in selling illegal exotic animals and slaves. The Hutt's influence is massive, enough to control the territory on most Outer Rim planets and even establish their own language.
Wait, they got fish in the desert?
Things don't always have to make sense, Doug, and the Pikes, they certainly don't. So we last saw the Pikes in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Now, the Pikes lead and control the production of spice in the galaxy, an illegal, addictive, and frequently deadly substance, which is considered so dangerous that even the scariest space gangsters would rather risk pissing off their clients than touch the stuff.
I'm not touching it.
Outside of the smugglers, the other two gangs are motivated for more political reasons. The Crimson Dawn started as a fundamentalist Sith restoration group built by Darth Maul himself, but after his demise, it was taken over by Lady Kira, who sought to weaponize the underworld against the Empire.
Hang on, that sounds kind of familiar.
Well, the idea of the Crimson Dawn and even the name Kira came from Lucas's original vision for the sequel trilogy. Initially, the sequels would set Maul up to be the villain of that new trilogy. The idea was that he would unite the underworld while Palpatine was in power, and then take that power back after Palpatine's fall. However, these plans were scrapped, but some of the ideas were later used in the movie Solo and later worked into the lore. Most of Crimson Dawn's story is laid out in the comics, and it's a fantastic read, but Outlaws fleshes them out better than the comics ever could. In the game, we get to see how these political gangs actually work themselves out in the larger universe. Not only do we get to see how they play against the other empire, but even attempt to topple the monarchies if they don't benefit their end goal. Which takes us to the final group, Clan Ashiga. The Ashiga clan are a new race to the Star Wars universe called the Melito.
What's a Melito?
Well, they're an insect humanoid race that lives under a religious monarchy, which they call their hives.
The hive also has great use for a thief like you.
They have a heavy Japanese influence, even referring to their outcast as Ronin. We've only seen them once before on screen, and a blink and you'll miss it scene in The Force Awakens. Culturally, service and loyalty to the Hive are paramount, and to this end, the Ashiga have slowly worked their way into most forms of criminal activity in the Outer Rim. In one storyline, Kira wants to push out the Queen and hires you to start a coup with the Queen's daughter.
Who do they think they are? The CIA?
Not touching that one, but we'll say seeing the dynamic between these groups at play really gave me something from Star Wars that I have been missing. The Outer Rim has always been disconnected from the governing authority of the core systems, regardless of who was in charge. As a result, most of the inhabitants of the Outer Rim place more trust in the cartels that have always been in power over the Empire's conscriptions or the missionary efforts of the High Republic. Like Kay, most of the people in the Outer Rim couldn't care less about the Empire or even the Rebel Alliance, which is what really makes her character unique, especially for a video game.
But the Empire and the Rebels, that's like all the Star Wars, person.
Actually, Doug, it's not, and that's what's great about it. Playing from Kay's perspective, the audience gets a rare ground-level perspective of Star Wars. The ideals of both groups, be it control, power, or freedom, get lost in the everyday person's day-to-day experience. To most citizens in the Outer Rim, the Empire and Rebellion are two more factions vying for control in their part of the galaxy. In the original trilogy, we see that the Empire has some presence on the outer larger worlds of the Outer Rim, but only a little bit.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
The real economic and political power is still firmly in the hands of the ruling cartels like the Hutts. So when the established political systems in charge either systemically fail you, ignore you, or exploit you, there is a very natural and understandable cause to turn to those who seem to address your more immediate concerns. And for people in the Outer Rim, that tends to turn them to the same cartels and syndicates Kay must work with throughout the game.
But the rebels are the good guys. How come she doesn't like them?
Well, Kay's situation is sort of their fault. The rebels lied to Kay in order to free one of their agents and left her to take the fall since she was a smuggler. To them, she is entirely expendable, which is one area where Outlaws really shines.
I think I'm done being used.
The rebellion, despite its intentions, causes very real problems for citizens of the galaxy. The only difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter is perspective, which Lucas intentionally included in his stories.
The good guys are the rebels. They're using asymmetric warfare against a highly organized empire. I think we call those guys terrorists.
When I did it, they were Viet Cong.
Outlaws shows the consequences of the rebellion for the average person, and it delivers that message in a way that no other Star Wars media has been able to do before.
Well, she can't be that cool if she's not a magic space wizard like the rest of the best Star Wars characters.
No, Doug, but that's exactly what works so well about this game. Every other Star Wars hero is always a part of some super high-stakes grand story. There's either a war to be fought, a prophecy to fulfill, or a grand military operation at risk of failure. Though Kay is a unique protagonist in that her primary concern is just survival. She wants no grand part to play in the universe or the machinations of the Force. Star Wars video games have tried to explore elements of the galactic underworld before, but never this immersively. Previously, games emphasized Force powers, lightsaber combat, or high-tech Mandalorian weapons, but Outlaws is all about lying, cheating, and sneaking your way through the Outer Rim's underbelly. In fact, outside of the one Darth Vader cameo, there are no Force-wielding characters in this game. Just like Andor and Rogue One, Outlaws drives its story with characters grounded in the real world around them. Andor itself is a great example of how it's very possible to create a Star Wars story separate from the legacy of the Jedi and the Sith. The majority of Star Wars content is tied to the Force and mysticism surrounding it. It's so refreshing to shift that focus to other parts of the universe, and when Disney focuses on these kinds of stories, they tend to do it really well. Playing this story instead of watching it provides a sense of intimacy and agency you can't experience from a film or TV series. The Star Wars underworld is filled with all kinds of secret nooks and crannies, and being able to walk around and explore every inch of it is so much more rewarding than using it as a backdrop in a 24-minute Disney Plus show. It's no mistake that most of the Star Wars games revolve around Force users. A huge part of the original trilogy was inseparably linked to the use of the Force, and the Jedi and all of the associated mystery. So it became a large vehicle for most of the development of Star Wars as a whole.
Well, yeah, person, you know, laser swords and magic powers are cool.
Right, but as time goes on, the Force gets old? Outlaws uses the opportunity to return to and expand on characters and plot points previously relegated to film and TV cameos, or if they're lucky, a comic book miniseries. Outlaws, though, really embraces this by allowing stray threads of Star Wars canon to be brought front and center, canonizing their legitimacy for other stories, past or future, and building stronger connective tissue between the original trilogy and expanding the greater whole of Star Wars storytelling is arguably Outlaws' greatest achievement. It helps connect the more stalwart fans of the original trilogy and fans who want to see new stories, but it is still a pretty risky move.
Well, what you mean by that?
Well, the game was very expensive, not just for people buying the game or the $100 DLC included version or the $120 Ultimate Edition with DLC included.
And that's not all.
In the words of Ubisoft CEO, Outlaws is the biggest marketing campaign ever so far for a Ubisoft game. When you consider this is coming from the same studio that's invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the Assassin's Creed franchise, that's a monumental amount of investment. It would be an equally bad investment if the game fails to perform, according to Ubisoft standards. AAA game studios are placing developers under even more scrutiny as other large IP studio games have likewise underperformed. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League performed underwhelmingly to the tune of a $200 million loss in revenue, resulting in Rocksteady announcing layoffs beginning this week. Just being a AAA game in this day and age was challenging enough, but it's also a Star Wars game. And as we've seen with the Book of Boba Fett and The Acolyte, Disney is not afraid to cut something if they think it will lose them money. The louder, more toxic side of Star Wars fandom latches on to anything that doesn't fit their version of Star Wars, and they haven't shied away from criticizing Outlaws in a very similar way. And that wouldn't be a problem worth mentioning if Disney weren't kind of validating them when they cut certain series. So this puts Star Wars Outlaws under a very harsh spotlight. If it succeeds, that opens the door for potential sequels and proves the storytelling risks it makes a success. If it fails, it'll be another major loss for AAA game studios and also validate the complaints of fans who struggle to move past the canon of the original trilogy.
Hey, come on, it's not worth it, man. It's not worth it. Not worth it.
The latter is especially unsettling because Disney will take fewer and fewer risks on new Star Wars, leading to what could be a very stagnant creative universe.
Wow, so I guess the fate of the galaxy really is at stake this time.
It could be, buddy, it could be. But regardless of its commercial success, it is still very important and very cool that Outlaws at least gave some time and attention to how the underworld of Star Wars operates. It connects new and classic elements of the Star Wars universe engagingly from a fresh perspective, and most importantly, it will be a flashpoint in the future of Star Wars stories. It immerses you in a way that no other Star Wars media has or could, which is what makes it great. Special shout out to the writer of this video, Ryan Yanichevsky. So let me know, what did you think of Star Wars Outlaws? What other parts of Star Wars do you want to explore? And let us know any details we missed from the game. Let me know down in the comments below, or you can @me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, be sure to subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.